Hi, I'm Harry. The Great Gatsby by Francis Scott Fitzgerald. Chapter 10. The Final. During the rest of that day and the next, there was a continuous coming and going of policemen, photographers, and newspapermen. As the inquest mentioned that Wilson suspected his wife of having a lover, Martha's sister Catherine swore Martha had never seen Gatsby and was completely happy with her husband. Wilson was called a man deranged by grief and the case ended there. I am from West Egg village of the catastrophe and from that moment on everything was referred to me. I became responsible for all the practical details because nobody else was interested. I had phoned Daisy half an hour after we found him, but he and Tom had already left. Next morning, I sent a letter to Wolftrip. I asked him to come on the next trip. He replied saying that he was too busy and didn't want to be involved. A more tender feeling for Gatsby started to grow inside me. On the third day, a telegram arrived from Minnesota. It was saying Henry C. Gass and said he was leaving immediately. He wanted to be at the funeral and asked her to wait for him. Gatsby's father was an old man with a sad face. He was wearing a long warm coat, although it was only September. He was obviously exhausted, so I took him to a music room and asked the butler to bring him a glass of milk. I saw it in Chicago newspaper, he said. I didn't know how to contact you. Where's Julie? I pointed to the sitting room. He got up slowly and went into the room where his son lay. After a little while, he came out, his eyes full of tears. He had a big future. He was young, but he had a lot of brain power. That's true, I said, uncomfortably. The morning of the funeral, I went to see Maria Wolfstrip. You were his closest friend, I said, so I know you will want to come to his funeral. I would like to, he said, but I can't do it. Where a man gets killed, I keep out. I used to be different, but now I got back to West Egg and went next door to see Mr. Gass. Had you seen him recently? I asked. He came to me 2 years ago and built me the house I live in. We were very upset when he ran away from home, but I see there was a reason for it. He knew he had a big future, and after his success, he was very generous with me. A little before 3 o'clock, a Lutheran priest arrived. We waited for half an hour, but nobody else came. It was raining when we got to the cemetery. Mr. Gass, the minister, and I were in the living and a little later 4 or 5 servants and the postman from West Egg arrived in Gatsby's station wagon. Then another car arrived. It was a man I had met once in Gatsby's library. I tried to think about Gatsby, but he was already too far away. I could only remember that Daisy hadn't sent a message or flower. After the service, we went quickly through the rain to our cars. I couldn't get to a house, the man from Gatsby's library said. Nobody could. But hundreds of people used to go there before, he said. The poor man. After Gatsby's death, the S wasn't the same for him. So I decided to leave. I saw Jordan Baker before I left and talked over what had happened to us and what had happened afterwards. When I had finished, she told me that she was engaged to another man. I didn't believe her, but I pretended to be surprised. For a minute, I thought I was making a mistake. Then I stood up. and say goodbye. I was angry, half in love with her and very sorry. One afternoon in October, I saw Tom. He was walking along Fifth Avenue. He saw me and he held out his hand. I didn't take it. What's the matter, Nick? Do you object to shaking hands with me? Yes, you know what I think of you. You're crazy, Nick, he said quickly. What did you say to Wilson that afternoon? I asked. I suspected Wilson had gone to see him before going to Gatsby's place. He stared at me silently and I knew the answer. I started to turn away, but he held my arm. I told him the truth, he said. He came to the door and tried to force his way upstairs. He was crazy. His hand was on his gun. He wanted to know who owned the car. He was ready to kill him. I had to tell him the truth. But Gatsby deserved it. He deceived you just like he did Daisy. He was an insensitive man. He ran over a model and never ever stopped his car. There was nothing I could say, except that it wasn't true. I couldn't forgive him or like him, but I thought that what he had done was, to him, correct. I shook hands with him. It seemed silly not to, because I suddenly felt that I was talking to a child and not a grown man. On my last night in West Egg, I went to look at Gatsby's empty house. I walked onto his beach. Most of the big houses were closed for the winter now. I thought about Gatsby. I remember the time when he had stretched out his arm to the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. His dream probably seemed so close that he couldn't fail to get hold of it. He didn't know that it was already behind him. So we beat on both against the current and blown back ceaselessly into the past.